6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. I am Chris at Force, joined virtually, as always, by Anna Forsyth at aforsyth03, continuing to hurt us on the cap each and every week, although thankfully we don't actually have to pay him any real money. It's Matley at Matley_61 and continue to remain on LTIR. In fact, we're not entirely sure if he's found his way to the KHL. Adam Obanel Carter at Adam FOC. How go things there, Anna?
Yeah, good. I'm stunned, surprised, shocked, all of the above. Canucks have won a game, and not only that, they have hung on to a lead.
Well, not just any lead, the dreaded 3-0 lead.
Dreaded 3-0 lead. And not just hung on to it, they got a shutout. Ladies and gentlemen.
Don't believe you. Don't believe you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I do yet either. By the time this comes out tomorrow, maybe I'll be ready to believe. But
you could consider that Canucks win, and not only holding a 3-0 lead, but capitalizing on it and building it to a 4-0 lead to get that shutout as being big news. And that's what this episode is all about. Big news. Before we get into the big news, though, I'm curious. How long do I continue to refer to Matt and Adam on the show? Like, Adam, we really don't know if he'll ever come back.
Yeah,
Matt is around, but he's, only going to come back when Matt wants to. It's the Anna and Chris show now.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, is like Adam... No, I would say no. I'm trying to make some allusions as to who Matt and Adam are compared to the Canucks. Like Louis, still paying him, not doing a damn thing for us.
No, that's Matt.
Yeah, he is probably the one go at this stage. Except that gives him a little too much credit, right?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say is Adam Sven Berchi, but really, we haven't buried Adam.
Yeah,
Adam buried himself.
That was not our fault. Yeah, Hubie Sven Berchi chose to go to the minors.
That's right. Well, again, we'll probably continue to mention them until such time as I decide not to. But I have actually dropped their names off of all of our podcast descriptions, social media, and all that. And let's be real. Since it's been the Anna and Chris show, we've done some crazy, crazy things. We've got the C4 text line now, which if you didn't know, 604-200-6201. That's 604-200-6201. I actually know it off the top of my head. I said that last show. I'm probably going to know this better than my own phone number, and I do.
That's pretty good. I would say most of my day job, is taking down phone numbers, so I don't think I'm ever going to remember it. I barely remember my phone number, so...
That's okay. I did you a solid. I threw it in Discord. You can grab it from there whenever Discord works for you. What else has happened with the podcast? Well, the Anna and Chris show has launched a weekly newsletter. That newsletter goes live Friday mornings, obviously relative to where you happen to be in the world, as I know a number of our listeners may actually find it gets to them on Saturdays, while some might suggest it's Friday late at night. But that newsletter is now live. And why might you want to subscribe to the newsletter, Anna? Any ideas?
News.
Well,
and if you want your news to be new, then get it from the newsletter. Because otherwise you might get the olds on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what happens. It's what we do in Rewind. We just talk about old news. But the newsletter is the new news. Speaking of which, we have some guests lined up. And we're not going to tell you who they are unless you subscribe to the newsletter. And how you can easily do that is go to bit.ly/the C4 newsletter. It was a difficult thing to go and get a bit.ly short link that made sense, because so many are taken, but the C4 newsletter, kind of like the C4 podcast.
I mean, yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Links in Discord as well, and obviously we'll be tweeting it, Facebooking it. I write the newsletter link in the newsletter for others to see. I actually threw it up on Patreon as well. So if you go to patreon.com/C4 podcast, you'll find it there. But that's just some of the big news. So we got, let's see, a Canucks win, having not blown a lead. We talked about the fact that we had the C4 text line, which isn't really new. It was the last show we talked about, but the newsletter, that's new. The big news is we have a partner on the show. You're going to hear us talking about them. But I got to give a huge shout out to the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association for stepping up and partnering with C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. This is big. This is something that this longest running Best Mediocre Canucks podcast has been doing for some time without a partner like the ICBA. So I'm pretty darn excited. And, props to friend of the show, Jordan Bateman, for facilitating the connection.
Yeah. Thank you, Jordan. He's a great friend to the hockey community. ICBA is a big supporter of independent broadcasting. So big shout out.
Yeah, huge news. So you know what? Let's actually talk about this huge news in greater detail. We're going to talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks last week, plus Monday night game, whether the sky is falling. We'll talk about the week that's ahead. Nhl Trade Deadline is going to be coming up. We've got an F word that's related to trades and all sorts of other goodies. So you're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network. If we think back to our last episode, Anna, you and I had suggested that the Vancouver Canucks, they needed to win a series against the Oilers. Now, it was a 2-game series, so arguably 3 points out of 4 was what was necessary, though I would have been willing to take 2 out of 4 and call it a day, so long as the Oil didn't get 3. But the Vancouver Canucks, they gave the Oilers 4 of those 4 points. And if it wasn't for the fact that the Oilers were by far the better team, the way they lost that first game against the Oilers had me thinking. It finally had me coming to the idea that this season is done. And, people in Discord were talking about it. Matt was asking whether or not I was finally on the, woe is me bus. But, oh my goodness, the Vancouver Canucks got themselves a 3-0 lead early in the first period, only to lose it 4-3. Like when the Oilers tied it up, I was thinking, okay, well, it's going to overtime. I can't imagine what that's going to look like with, McDavid, Draisaitl, and McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it was kind of that they didn't go to overtime because loser points, they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things when you give your opponent in division 2 points. So in a way, it was kind of because it was only going to end one way.
Well, you could argue the 1 point that had the Vancouver Canucks found a way to get out of that game would have helped them against the competition that they're facing right now, which are the Flames, potentially the Winnipeg Jets, maybe the Senators. But losing that game the way they did was so disheartening. And I'd half expected to see a much better effort and better game in the next matchup. And I hate to say it, but we didn't.
Nope.
And that's the hard part. It's the effort. Like, really, I mean, we've talked about this time and time again. The lack of effort is what's concerning.
It really is. It's in that game against the Jets on the Friday, so 10 days ago now. It was very much like the Canucks were in the game because the Jets were only 1-0 up, but they just now looked like they were going to score. And it felt the same way. I wasn't as disheartened after the 4-3 game, even though it was pretty terrible. But yeah, it was really kicking the fans when they were down to show up with that effort.
Yeah. The thing about that sort of, was it Thursday now? I want to say it was Thursday. Yeah, the Vancouver Canucks got the 3 nights off. That Thursday game against the Oilers is that the Vancouver Canucks simply didn't look like they actually showed up. The Oilers were in control pretty much from the get-go. The fact that your goaltender is one of your stars is never a good thing when you lose in a shutout.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess who else is going to get a star in that game when you're shut out? But the fact that your goaltender is one of them, tells you how badly you were outplayed. That game, ended up being the way it was. Thatcher Demko, I know we've heard the hate against Bubble Demko. That was Bubble Demko. Like, that was Thatcher doing everything he possibly can to keep the Vancouver Canucks in a game against the Edmonton Oilers in an effort to somehow magically make things happen, and it didn't. And it didn't get off to a real good start. 49 seconds into the first period, Jake Virtanen gets a delay of game penalty, which, bad luck. But Jake not being outdone, 9 minutes later, takes a hooking penalty that just looked horrible. And that sort of, added things up. It's just a tough game. I half expected the way it was going that Mike Smith would somehow score a goal.
Yeah, it was real tough, and I just remembered why I was so disheartened for the Thursday game. It was because I turned off a cricket game that England were winning. This is the England women's team, to watch Canucks lose, and I just knew in the pit of my stomach that's what I was doing. Yeah. But yeah, showcase Jake. They're trying their best. We'll get to it a bit later when we talk about the trade deadline, but
yeah, he was out on the top line. He was getting some power play time. Like Jake was arguably getting opportunities. And this is the struggle that we've talked about with Jake over, I don't know how many episodes, is that when he gets these opportunities, he needs to capitalize. Granted, the opportunity he's receiving now is likely, to your point, showcasing him. But he's not like any other player that's going to continue to get such prime chances if he doesn't go and show that he deserves them and deserves them more than anyone else. So it's just hard. And again, I'm not trying to pile on Jake. He was not the only problem in that game. The problem was that when you were down going into the third period, you got 4 shots on net.
Yeah.
Like, I actually turned the game off during the third period because I was like, we're done. I'll go watch something on the PVR. Hey, look, Call Me Cats on, or whatever that show is. Let me watch a recorded version of that. No, actually, it might have been Be Positive. I might have been watching Be Positive.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, another sitcom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that have been really disappointing over the last couple of weeks for the Canucks. One is the lack of offensive effort, and 2 is the ill discipline. Because we have seen time and time again the Canucks taking bad penalties, or they lose the puck and they're not trying to get it back, or they'll lose the puck and they lash out, and just stupid stuff like that. And it's just like you're really not helping yourself when you do things like that.
Yeah. So before we talk about the game against Winnipeg, which again we let off was a big win, after seeing the Vancouver Canucks lose both games to the Edmonton Oilers, was the sky falling?
Yeah. I mean, I that's the lowest I felt all season.
Like the team,
because it didn't seem like there was a way out.
No, and like it this is the competition that they're going to face. Like the Edmonton Oilers are currently a hot team in the North Division. We've seen how the Montreal Canadiens have the Vancouver Canucks number. A team that decided that things weren't going so well, so they made changes. They actually, fired their coach, their coaching staff. Shout out to Alex Burrows, who's now an assistant coach in the NHL for the Montreal Canadiens. But and again, I just as a side note, I wasn't aware that you could make changes during the season either to your bench or your front office. I mean, Vancouver apparently didn't know that this was the case, or maybe Montreal knew it and no one else did.
I didn't know it was possible either. Last episode, I talked about Toronto hysteria. We need some of that Montreal sacre bleu hysteria.
Well, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry for saying that.
The Canadians definitely have their own sort of version of hysteria, which isn't anything like the Toronto Maple Leafs hysteria. The Maple Leafs lose one game and the people are looking to get fired. This is a team that's lost 4 times in regulation this season. 6 if you count overtime losses. And yeah, one of those losses means, okay, things need to change, heads must roll. Here in Vancouver, yeah, you know what? Canucks Twitter, Canucks fans have been a little up in arms for quite some time. We're our own breed. But the Vancouver Canucks currently sit, after tonight, a win tonight, with 400 hockey, 25 games played. We're halfway through the season. We're actually a little bit beyond that, are we not?
How many games do we have?
Is it 56 games maybe? Or maybe we're just under halfway
it's
through.
It's 56 games.
Okay, so we're just under halfway through.
I was going to say, I
hockey.
think we have the most in the league, right?
Well,
yes.
The Vancouver Canucks have played 25 games after tonight, and you're right. Yeah, most in the league. Like if we look at just the North Division, though, because that's the only division that matters to get to the playoffs, the Vancouver Canucks have games in hand. So people might say, you know what? The Flames will lose a few. The Canadians will lose a few games. The Jets are, going to lose a few. The Oilers are going to lose a few. All 5 teams in front of Vancouver can lose the games they have in hand and still have more points than the Canucks. Like everyone that goes and suggests the Vancouver Canucks just played a lot of games, things will change. If that was the case, I could see that happening. But like right now, the Vancouver Canucks have 20 points. In fact, if the Ottawa Senators were to win their game in hand, the Vancouver Canucks are only 1 point ahead of them in the North for the race to the bottom. Like I think it's now time, maybe not to panic. I haven't reached out because again, it's a wacky season. Lots of crazy things happen if you become a streaky team. I just get no sense the Vancouver Canucks are going to start streaking. And the teams ahead of them are finding ways to overcome adversity that the Vancouver Canucks are struggling to do.
I mean, even the Ottawa Senators are finding ways to win games. And now I'm really scared that when we play them again, they'll beat us this time because I figured like that was our one, check it off. We'll win against Ottawa at least, but that's not enough. But now I'm just like, oh gosh, maybe we underestimated Ottawa.
So for those of you who are listening, like, oh my goodness, Anna and Chris, they're so negative. After losing those 2 games to the Oilers, we had already said that would be really a turning point for the Vancouver Canucks if they were to actually make an effort to turn things around. They didn't. So what did they do? They beat the Winnipeg Jets. They not only beat the Jets, they beat the Jets handily, 4-0, in a game where they got 2 goals, like bang, bang, early in the first period.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a power play goal, which we hadn't seen in quite some time. Special teams actually, panned out. Goaltender obviously getting a shutout in Bubble Demko. And you might say, oh no, they're turning it around. You're too negative about those games against the Oilers. Turning it around. Okay. If the Vancouver Canucks are truly turning things around, they need to turn things around by not only beating the Winnipeg Jets this past night, but tonight, if you're listening to the podcast on Tuesday, they need to beat the Jets again. And then after that, they need to beat the Leafs in both games, which we'll talk about when we get into half full, half empty. So if I want to sort of suggest there's positives, it's what we saw from the likes of Hoglander.
Yeah, which in fairness has been a positive all season.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a new effort. He's even in the losing games, Hoglander's effort has never faltered. So, well,
maybe I wouldn't maybe go as far as say it's never faltered, but he has been out there holding his own far more than one would expect a rookie player to do. So he's given a lot of slack that way. But I'm not knocking that he's had bad games, but it's not for a lack of lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's what I'm trying to put across.
Yeah. I say lack of lazy.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, whatever the opposite of lack of lazy is.
Lack of energy?
Lack of energy, lack of effort. Yeah, I mean, he's just had tough games. What would you have done if he had scored a lacrosse goal tonight? Because it looked like he tried to go and get that puck on his stick and go up. Like, I would
anytime
imagine
he's behind the net, Canucks Nation holds its breath.
Well, but have we seen an opportunity present itself like tonight's did? Like if that puck sits, he goes for it.
There was an opportunity a few games ago, I want to say last week, where Shorty called it out that he was holding the puck behind the net and the opportunity was there. But this was the most clear cut where he actually attempted or started.
Oh yeah, he was coming around the way he was holding his stick and what he was doing with the puck. It looked like it was going to happen. Didn't, but it's just a matter of time. I'm okay. Out of curiosity, Adam, what are your thoughts on players, especially young players, doing something like this in a game that doesn't happen to be called the All-Star Game. Because the code would tell you, you don't do this stuff. But as a fan, I love it. In fact, if someone tried to do it against the Vancouver Canucks, I'd applaud it too.
Yeah. And okay, as a fan of the team, if we were down late in the game and needed a goal, maybe not then, pick your spot. But I am absolutely for it. The game is evolving, and I grew up a fan of Arsenal, who had the ultimate Hoglander type player in Thierry Henry, and people would say, like, why do you do the tricks you do? Sometimes it doesn't come off. And he's saying, that's the only way I know how to play. And I think Hoglander's the same. He's not doing it to be fancy. Neither is Petey trying to be fancy when he does his deeks. That is just the way he plays, and I think it's great from an entertainment point of view.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with an entertaining style of hockey. Take chances. I would prefer not significantly high risk that can turn around and score it on you, but trying to score a lacrosse, style goal in a game that you're up, or if the opportunity were to present itself, no problem. That said, it's not like every player can go and score such a goal. Really, it comes down to being, one of the greats. And the greatest hockey players, they never quit practicing their skills to improve their game. So you shouldn't be any different yourself. The ICBA trains thousands of workers every year on everything from Excel spreadsheets to excavating trenches, from personal leadership skills to construction estimating, from fall protection to effective management skills. And, there's 500 other courses. They're online, on demand. They got webinars and even COVID safe in person. ICBA has an option for you and your busy lifestyle. So start climbing the corporate depth chart by sharpening your skills today. Check out icba.ca/courses.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on it.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Let's talk about the week ahead. The Vancouver Canucks are going to be playing the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I'm going to presume you're listening to this show on Tuesday before that game. If you're listening to the show after that game, hopefully, if the Vancouver Canucks are looking to turn things around, will have got themselves another 2 points. They then travel home to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So on Thursday, we've got our normal, 7 p.m. Pacific start. And then on Saturday for Hockey Night in Canada, the Vancouver Canucks will play at 4 p.m. The sun should set just as the Vancouver Canucks are losing to the Toronto Maple Leafs in regulation. And guess who's in town next week? Oh, les habitants de Montréal.
Yeah.
Canadian Montréal.
Malheureusement.
So we'll talk more about the Canadiens matchup and sort of what's happening in next week's show. Arguably, we could talk about it now, but who are we fooling ourselves? The Vancouver Canucks, despite the Canadiens going through a tough spot right now, will find a way to lose to them. And what's even scarier is that when the Vancouver Canucks play the Habs both on the 8th and 10th of March, the following week on the Friday and Saturday, they play them in Montreal. So, hey.
Yeah, Canucks are like that really good friend. When you're going through a tough spot, they're there for you.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. So let's talk about the matchup against the Leafs. I don't know how the Vancouver Canucks win both of those games. I could see them if they are, on a heater. If they win against the Jets on Tuesday night, tomorrow night, or tonight, depending on how you're listening to this podcast. Sometimes that happens and you're suddenly on a streak. So could the Vancouver Canucks win against the Leafs on that home game Thursday night?
Possibly, right? Possibly. And if I see them winning any of them it is in that circumstances of winning against the Jets and then staying hot. But do I see them winning both? Not at all. I mean, we're bad at the Saturday 4:00 games.
And there's no way the Leafs are going to lose to the Vancouver Canucks twice. They're too good of a team to do that.
No, exactly. And we talked about this before. Like, Edmonton are a good team, but I do think Toronto are, like, a class above.
Well, Toronto is. I mean, this season specifically, they're in such a good spot. I mean, we talked about it. They have lost so few games that one might argue that while they have not clinched a playoff spot, they have clinched a playoff spot. Like, they're that good this year.
Yeah.
I look at the Canucks, again, having a chance in every game that they play where they put in a solid effort, but we've also seen the moral victories where good efforts have not paid out with points. And the Canucks, unfortunately, have dug themselves into such a hole that that's what is needed. They can't simply make the playoffs on moral victories alone. Points are needed. They need to win. If they could somehow scrape together 6 points, I don't care if they give loser points to these teams, but if they scrape together 6 points and start inching forward, anything can happen. I'm just looking at the standings right now, and the North Division is really up and down. Like the longest streak is currently with the Maple Leafs. They've won 2 games in a row. Everything else is a 1-game streak. Actually, looking, throughout the league, the Lightning currently have a 4-game winning streak. No one's hotter than the Minnesota Wild right now. Have won 6 in a row. So,
wow. I mean, you're right. The thing I would say is that kind of contradicts what you were saying earlier about all the teams above the Canucks being out of sight in a way.
Well, so I look at it this way. So the Toronto Maple Leafs are completely out of reach. Yes, I know for those doing the math, you'll tell me that that's not true. I'm going to suggest that the Leafs are going to win more games than they're going to lose. So there's just no way they're going to catch up. The Oilers, I think they've figured this game out this season. They're getting goaltending, which has been one of the weaknesses that they've experienced in seasons past. So let's say, for argument's sake, with the 2 players they have on the first line, they are going to continue to put wins on the board, so they're going to be out of reach. That then puts us into this weird situation when we consider where the Winnipeg Jets currently sit. So the Winnipeg Jets currently actually have the second best winning percentage or points percentage in the North Division. They're actually ahead of the Oilers, but because of games played, points earned, Edmonton is ahead. So if I'm going to suggest that the Oilers are out of reach, I have to suggest the Jets are out of reach. But the wild card is I don't know how the Vancouver Canucks will perform against them Tuesday night. If the Canucks win, then I start to wonder, is there something there? So Montreal, Canucks can't beat them, but maybe the Canadiens continue to slide, so they're maybe in reach. But that's the problem. That's the 4 spot. And during this point in time, you're now competing with the Canadiens for that last playoff spot where the Calgary Flames are already ahead of you. They've got games in hand and they're ahead of you. And an Ottawa Senators team that is starting to figure out how to string things together. The Sens right now are currently 6-4-0 in their last 10.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. And your point earlier is if the Vancouver Canucks can't get the guaranteed wins out of the Senators, which this time last month we thought would be a sure thing.
The only sure thing, maybe.
Yeah, where else are they going to get the points that are needed? I kind of feel that we're reaching that point in the season where the Vancouver Canucks need to seriously consider next year. Not to suggest that they don't play to win or try to find a way to get into the playoffs, but they now have to really consider how can they position themselves for next season when it comes to our next topic, which is the NHL Trade Deadline.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concerning thing, right? Because whatever happens and however bad a spot Canucks look by the time they get to the trade deadline, you're always going to have St. Louis, who were bottom of the league in January and won the cup. And you're always going to have last year where Canucks were just about made the playoffs through points percentage and then overextended themselves in the bubble. And you're always going to have those things that, Jim Benning and John Weisbrod will point to it and say, we should go all in. Look what we can do. And that's the concerning thing.
This is where the Vancouver Canucks cap situation, I think, becomes a blessing. It prevents Trader Jim from going all in. I mean, he could still do some damage, but for him to go all in, the cap is going to really hamstring his ability to do silly where it's like, I'm going to give a prospect up or I'm going to give picks up, because prospects and picks don't help you with your cap. And just looking at cap friendly right now, the Vancouver Canucks are currently sitting with approximately $800,000 in cap space, which would require anything to go all in that comes in to require something of equivalent value to go all out. So I think there's the blessing, is the cap is going to prevent Jim from being stupid.
See, we thought the Canucks' bad cap management was a bad thing, but, even that has its upside.
When is it that C4 is not positive? This is a proof.
That's so positive.
Geez. It's amazing. But actually, just on off the rails here, the Capitals currently have $10 in cap space.
What can you buy with that?
That's cap management, $10. Again, I'm referring to cap friendly. Obviously, the calculations may be weird, and they are in LTIR, but current cap space, $10. The Toronto Maple Leafs, a current cap space of 0. But their projected cap space was a little bit higher. But yeah, $10. That's unreal.
Why is $10 funnier than none? It's just for some reason it is funnier.
Well, so for the Caps to get their LTIRs, they currently have 3 players in LTIR. So they've really managed their cap to allow for this flexibility within the 3. You look at the Maple Leafs, they only have 1 player in LTIR, so they've leverage that to put a body on, but technically speaking, they've got that additional room, the projected space that they had. So, in the grand scheme of things,
I'm just like, what is this idea of being flexible? Just allowing flexibility into your cap so that when things like the pandemic hit, you aren't completely screwed.
Well, okay, let's give Trader Jim a bone here. He did not predict that the Luongo recapture would hit the bottom line. I mean, that obviously impacted the Vancouver Canucks. Pre-pandemic, the flexibility that exists was lost when the cap up became static. So, like, I don't put everything at Jim's feet, but with the opportunity existed to maximize his cap, like, was it 3 seasons ago, we were like, oh my God, man, take some bad contracts, get some picks. Look at what crazy stuff we might be able to do. The Toronto Maple Leafs showed you how it can be done.
Yeah.
Jim, we know you like to copy. He's like, man, my buddy Chiarelli up there in Edmonton, he knows how to run a team. The sad part is that Edmonton has now figured out how to turn things around. So maybe some organizational change is what's needed. But looking at the trade deadline, it's April 12th. And if we factor in the 2-week quarantine period, if you want your returning asset who's coming from a team other than the North Division, which is possible, I'm thinking deals start to take place now because you want to get the player in before the playoffs. And if you're going with an all-in mentality or we're going to make the playoff mentality, you don't want to send assets out and then have to sit and watch an asset hang out in a hotel room for 2 weeks before they can play.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to deal with it, but I don't think you want it to be, make the deal on April 12th and hopefully we see you in the playoffs. Oh, God. Worst case scenario. I'm sorry I even just considered this. Let's say the Vancouver Canucks do trade outside the North Division and actually acquire a player. Let's say on April 12th. That player would not be eligible to play, presuming they travel like on the 13th. From, let's say, the United States, they would not be eligible to play until the 27th. That would give them 6 games in a Canucks uniform guaranteed, unless the team makes the playoffs. I have this.
That's even less than Toffoli.
Yeah, it's true. That Trader Jim will find a way to make that happen. But if you're in his position, what is it you're trying to do at this point?
I mean, just don't do anything stupid if that's not too big an ask. I mean, get anything you can for, like, I think Jake Virtanen. Like, I think we've talked about this before, but I think we're still in a position where a lot of people are on the trading block if the deal is right. There's a few players that I would be really sad to see go, but there's also those players that really are the few tradable assets that aren't the, no-goes of Petey and Quinn and Bo. Remember when Markstrom used to be on that list?
Oh, the Markstrom was the no-go?
No-go, yeah. Anyway.
I do, but okay. I mean, we both agreed that the Markstrom deal that he got out of Calgary was one the Vancouver Canucks couldn't afford. And even if they got a hometown discount, I don't think the discount would have been sufficient to allow for the Vancouver Canucks to do much of anything else.
No, you're right. But I can still be sad.
True. I think I look at back now and I kind of wonder, if you only had more time, Jim, could you have found a way to get an asset in return for Markey, or not allow Toffoli to go to Montreal at a hell of a good price, or lose out on Chris Tanev, or see Stetcher go to Detroit, or Josh Levo disappear? I know we're beating this horse that's dead again, but
I don't think the North Division was so far of a stretch that they wouldn't have even discussed that possibility in the front office.
But back to your point about sort of Virtanen, I think Virtanen is by far the target that is not most tradable, but maybe the Vancouver Canucks would like to have a redo on. I genuinely wonder, with the play that we've seen from him this season, if they're looking back at that qualifying offer and saying, about that. He's making a cap hit of 2.55 per. The way his contract, however, is structured is that his base salary next year is much higher. Vancouver Canucks structured a lot of their deals in a way that the base salary this year was lower to obviously save cash in the bank. But that actually is a problem, because if you were to acquire Jake, you're going to pay him more money next year. And while, yes, he doesn't hurt you on the cap, not many owners like paying a player more than they are worth, which is why a possible deal with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks got tied up. Allegedly, the Danton Heinen, Jake Virtanen swap that everyone was talking about this weekend did not happen because the Vancouver Canucks are hesitant to eat salary.
And we've seen before, just over and over again, management teams get the most out of assets by retaining salary on some bad deals in order to get favorable assets in return. So it's frustrating that we aren't able to do that, but there's nothing that we can do about that. There's no,
and I mean, the question came up in C4 Discord as to whether or not the Aquilini family, runs a very tight wallet. And obviously, I don't know for certainty, but one of the things that I feel has become apparent is that so long as the Vancouver Canucks are not locked out or playing as into a shortened lockout season or dealing with a pandemic, they make money. And when the team is making money, ownership is willing to spend money. So think of it as a household budget. They're bringing in X dollars and ownership is willing to spend X. They might even do X plus a little bit because they know next year they can actually then maybe spend X minus a little bit to make up for it. This season is unlike any other. They are paying a lot of money and getting very little in return. And now you have owners who are we're not really keen to go and pay someone more than they're worth.
Yeah, I can understand it. I guess the only reason it's frustrating is because it's almost just compared to the contracts that are already signed and inked and constraining the Canucks, it seems like an easy hurdle to get through. But of course, I do understand that we're living in very uncertain economic times and, there's no guaranteed income. I mean, we talked before the show about the vaccine plan in BC, but we're still a ways away from knowing when they can get fans back in the stadium. And it doesn't look like Canucks are going to make the playoffs, even if fans back in the stadium, no playoffs was a possibility. So, yeah, it is a real obstacle. I do understand that.
I mean, if you were to consider that, Jake is a player who's somehow finding suitors, like there are teams that are actually calling Jim to say, what about Jake? I would imagine the hang up is that second year of his deal where he's being paid like, $3+ million. So teams are now going to go and evaluate whether or not the Vancouver Canucks get anything reasonable in return, whereas the Canucks don't think are wanting to give Jake away for free, though I would argue you're saving $2 million on a cap that's already in a tough spot. And one might suggest there are players waiting in the wings that can provide you what Jake has been giving when he, plays. So might be a way to save money.
2.5 per, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think there are solutions. I think the potential with Jake exists, though. When are we going to see that come through?
That's the thing. I think I've run out of patience. And I won't say that his development has been perfect from an organizational standpoint. Mm-hmm. There are still certain things that the coaching could have done back in the day and been clearer with Jake with what kind of player they expected him to be. But overall, he's just not shaped up to be the player we expected.
Looking throughout the lineup, though, I mean, who else might fetch you something if you were to look to make a change? I mean, Gaudette is the other name that seems to be fetching interest, though I'm not entirely sure trading Adam Gaudette makes a lot of sense right now. Like, what exactly are you getting back in return that you can afford? I mean, Gaudette only costs $950K on the cap. He's an RFA going into next season. So, really, you're probably not seeing too much of a swing there unless you're getting picks. I mean, there was some talk that Beagle might have some people kicking tires. I don't entirely see a team wanting to eat $3 million. Plus, you've got a modified no trade
values there. Just back on Gaudette, because of what we consider a misstep of them not signing Gaudette to 2 years, that's also would put a potential team off. Is that if they had that guarantee of that low salary for 2 years, they might be more willing.
Yeah. I think the rental option probably is what the Vancouver Canucks can offer. And again, we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks being sellers. There should be no reason why they would go in for the playoffs. So if we're thinking rental, you've got Pearson and Sutter as potential rental options.
Pearson would be one of the names I mentioned before that would be sad to see him go, but he could be a valuable piece for someone.
Yeah, and I mean, and both of the two players there are in the last year of their deals. So I think if you were looking for, I'll use Sutter as an example, and not to suggest that Sutter would be, willing to go. He's got an NTC, which if I'm just quickly looking up, so he has a list of 15 teams he cannot be traded to. So in a complexity of a quarantine-style transit, who knows what those 15 are. But if we look at Sutter as the player, if you need a strong center, consistently reliable, defensive-minded, and you want to go for it, why not make a deal to acquire someone of his? Because if it doesn't work out, you just let him go at the end of the season. Do what the Vancouver Canucks have done in the past, where they go and get good rentals and let them go to other teams. Because I think that's what you do, right? You don't generally sign a rental.
Yeah, but and again, Sutter might be willing to. I mean, it's hard to say. Would he be willing to go for a rental? It would have to be a damn good opportunity.
Well, I think if it's a chance to win, I think Sutter would. I think as a rental perspective, presuming it's not on the list of teams, and even if it was, if this was a team that was contending for a cup, I think Sutter would.
But
if it's
they would have to
Ottawa
be
Senators.
legit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Tanner Pearson, I think he's still young-ish. He
Miller?
is very versatile.
Would you trade Miller?
No.
Would you not even entertain a phone call if it was presented to you?
Sure. Because as we said, he's not on the no-go list, so sure, I'd pick up the phone, but with the price we paid for Miller.
Oh, no doubt. But this is, again...
Like, not a full season and a bubble isn't quite the value I wanted to get from that.
Sure, but then you might suggest that his contract hit is worth the room for a team that's going to start to have to look at as to how they're going to pay for Petey and Hughes. Two players we'll get into in a moment. Again, I don't think it's good value, but Trader Jim has gone and done some crazy stuff. And while Miller has provided himself well for the most part with what little we've seen out of him, I think I'd entertain a reasonable phone call.
Yeah.
And it's not just I pick up the phone. I actually listen to the offer that's being made.
Sure. I'm not sure if this matters in this topsy-turvy season, but in terms of showcasing, he's not exactly put himself like in the best light, especially attitude-wise. And for some people, that might be concerning. I'm not like hugely concerned that JT Miller has quit on this team, by the way, but there's been moments where you've been disappointed at his attitude for sure.
Yeah, and there are those, if you are a member of C4 Discord, who may suggest that there are things going on behind the scenes. Again, reading tea leaves and hearing from those around the scene, there is some light smoke coming from the horizon.
Some real quiet whispers and scuttlebutt.
Yeah. And all the like. But you know what? Let's take ourselves a short break here before we talk more about a possible trade. You'll listen to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
Support for this podcast comes from Wild Turkey Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Let's tune in to their one-on-one with Jamal, a real bartender from Old Fourth Ward in Atlanta.
I really get into the backstory of whatever I'm pouring, out of respect. There are literally years of experience behind these bottles. Wild Turkey, same recipe since 1942. If you want a true classic, this is what you want to order.
Wild Turkey. Wild Turkey Distilling Company, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Copyright 2020, Campari American, New York, New York. Never compromise, drink responsibly.
Microsoft Teams is helping a bicycle company reinvent the way that they work.
We make bicycles for everyday riders. Once the pandemic hit, we started doing virtual visits. All of a sudden, we could open up our showroom to customers around the world.
Learn more at Microsoft.com/Teams.
He liked to say the F word.
Well, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
Kevin Paul Dupont. You might know him from his coverage of the Boston Bruins. He writes for the Boston Globe. He's a fan of the Vancouver Canucks, I understand. I can't say I actually follow him. I do not on Twitter. He does tend to find his way into my timeline from time to time. And he goes and tweets out earlier today, Vancouver, with Hughes and Pettersson, also would be interesting trade partners with Buffalo/Eichel. Now, when he drops this tweet, people are like, say what? Like, there are those Canucks fans who are like, what are you talking about, buddy? Like, what the actual F? Those Pettersson and Hughes for Eichel ain't going to happen. I don't necessarily believe he was suggesting Pettersson and Hughes for Eichel, but what I think he was suggesting, what I hope he was suggesting, is that Pettersson or Hughes for Eichel, which ain't my cup of tea, but the Vancouver Canucks are in a tough spot. And what the F are they going to do to pay Quinton and Elias where this type of deal, I mean, it doesn't help them. Eichel's signed. At least there's some certainty there, but.
Yeah, but they will move heaven and earth to sign those Quinn and PD deals, whatever they may be. And they're going to have to. Jack Eichel, shaky start, very good player, turns out. Like, wasn't, 100% from the beginning, but very good player. Is he Elias Pettersson quality? No, I don't think many people in the league are. besides the few obvious players that would be above Petey. Quinn Hughes, I think it's so dangerous to get rid of the only...
What are you talking about? The Vancouver Canucks are ripe with defensive depth, especially offensive defensemen.
Yeah, tons of them. Well, yeah, if we're to believe the reports coming out of Utica this weekend, Jack Rathbone is the next Quinn Hughes anyway, so we don't need to worry.
Yeah, okay. I won't beat around the bush. I don't trade either of those two. I'm willing to entertain the conversation in so much as that it showed up on social media. But like someone had sort of, again, incredulously followed up with him like, wait, they would offer them for Jack? And his response to them is, they're the kind of assets someone has to offer for Eichel. If, heaven forbid, Trader Jim were to somehow swing a crazy deal where one or both went to the Sabres for Eichel, I like Eichel, not at that price. And I don't think the Vancouver Canucks are a better team as a result.
And I can understand the point of, yes, those are the kinds of assets that need to be in the discussion for Eichel. Because if I was the Buffalo Sabres, yeah, like I wouldn't be letting go of Jack Eichel for anything one short of a miracle player like Hughes or Pettersson. So I can understand it from their perspective. But by the same token, no. Like if you, just because that's the price that they give, you don't have to pay it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it comes down to, is that you're right. Just because that's the price you pay doesn't mean you actually have to go in and buy. And we actually gave Trader Jim some credit when he wasn't signing crazy deals, like paying Markstrom what Calgary was able to bring, because the Vancouver Canucks could not afford that. So why, Jim, would you suddenly come around and then not maybe overpay, but pay that type of market for a player that doesn't make your team better? If I don't see how Eichel makes this team better if you lose Hughes and Pettersson. And at best, if you lose Hughes or Pettersson, I still don't see how the team's better. You could argue maybe it's a wash, but again, I don't think it necessarily is. So,
and just to agree with you on that, it's a different level, but it's kind of what we're talking about in the offseason, where we kind of thought, oh, this, the defensive players that we've lost and those we brought in, it might be a wash, might be even an improvement. I think it's a case of, it's not just a numbers game here. It's not like Jack Eichel is a 85 player and like Quinn Hughes is a 90 player. So if we take it, there's only 5 difference. Like it's, these are human beings. They're systems. Mm-hmm. Like as much as Chris Tanev was important to this team, like Brock, Quinn, and Petey, that like they play well together, they suit each other's game, they're friends, and I just think it would rip the heart out of this team.
I think it would not only rip the heart of the team, I think it would gut fans.
Yeah.
Like there was
the message you send is just
Taj on Twitter, Taj, I think it's 1944, had commented that he had seen much less Canucks chatter, and based on his timeline, you wouldn't have even known the Vancouver Canucks were playing tonight. I don't know if he was necessarily being sarcastic in his delivery, but it does raise a point that there are a lot of people who are starting to check out. It's a crazy season, a crazy time that we're living through. Something like that is not the right way to reinvigorate a fan base at all. Totally. If you're curious about his tweets, so Dupont's tweets, it's Globe KPD. You can go and check him out on Twitter. He does follow this up. I have absolutely no idea, why he got into the conversation of the Vancouver Canucks looking for Eichel. Like I couldn't see anything in his timeline that suggested this was the thing. But he followed it up with a Canadian cities ranked. Number 1, Vancouver. Number 2, Quebec City. Number 3, Montreal. Number 4, Toronto. Number 5, Calgary. There is no room for debate.
I really don't want to agree with him, but it sounds pretty good list to me.
Well, I'm curious as to that list is like, because like you said Vancouver, but like, is he talking about Vancouver in our area? Because arguably when we start getting these lists, you'll start to have people say, well, what about Victoria over Vancouver? Right? Like there's some idiosyncrasies.
Okay, I wouldn't
people were replying,
Victoria.
someone said I love Whitehorse, and he replied, Whitehorse is great, but I require civilization. And
I mean, that's not the kind of thing that I would necessarily say on Twitter if I had a ton of followers, but I sort of agree. It looks beautiful, but it's not a city. Like,
yeah.
I think even Calgary, Calgary is a city, but Edmonton, like, it's only a city by Canadian standards. Sorry, people in Alberta, but like, there's nothing there.
Well, do you know? Okay, there are cities here in the Lower Mainland that are probably cities by Canadian standards.
Exactly. I'm sorry, but only Vancouver is a city.
Well, okay.
Richmond is a city, and New Westminster is a city, and Burnaby is a city, but it's not.
What about Surrey, though? Surrey's population rivals
Surrey's
Vancouver.
Massive. It's a huge region, but it's
But it's also got a huge population.
Yeah, but it's not centralized enough.
Okay.
It's too big.
Yeah, you've heard it here, Anna, the definitive, geographist. What I don't know, city planner. I don't know what type of education you require for this. Civil planner, civil engineer.
Yeah, but I guess my problem is that I will definitely contradict myself down the line because of just my personal preferences.
Next episode, the city of Richmond's beautiful. It's one of the greatest cities in the world.
Down by the water is nice. Where you live is lovely.
Well,
I have not been to Chris's house. He's not invited me, even pre-COVID, but I know the area.
Maybe post-COVID. But I also don't describe this area as a city. It's a neighborhood that I live in.
Right.
So, but I do live in the city of Richmond. Speaking of big things, this was a big episode. Big news. It was a whole lot of what you're used to, a whole lot more of what you're not. We got some exciting things lined up for the show. I mean, now that it's the Anna and Chris show, we doing some crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, I'm genuinely excited for everything that's upcoming. I mean, we've got things lined up despite the Vancouver Canucks having a rough go as of late.
Yeah, guests are coming. C4
and not just your average guests. Like we've got people that are going to be joining our show that we want to showcase and give an opportunity to that you might not hear anywhere else. Like it's one of the reasons why you want to listen to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. I mean, out of the 3,000 Canucks podcasts that are out there,
we're the
C4
oldest
is the best.
and the best.
Yeah, longest running. Who was it? I was reading an article. Oh, actually, no, I think it was a tweet, and I might have referenced it on the last show, but I think it was someone had said that it was Faber, that we're the longest running podcast. We'll let you know about it. Damn straight we will. We can claim that till the end of days, as long as we continue to record. No one can take that from us.
We're shameless about it. We don't care.
Oh, well, got to be shameless about something, right? But as you said, guests lined up. We've got C4 at the movies happening again. You know, big one. Super fan, Anna Forsyth, loving herself some Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, apparently.
I still can't get over, and for those of you who turned into Instead of the Anthems, our patrons only pre-show, you have never watched a movie with Sylvester Stallone.
I don't think so. I mean, what has he been in besides Rocky and the Expendables?
A lot. Like a ton of stuff.
I know,
Judge Dredd.
No. I feel like he has such a distinctive voice and personality that I would remember him if I'd seen a movie with him.
Oh man, Copland was another one.
I don't know what that is. Never heard of that.
Oh gosh, you know what? We're gonna have to remedy this. There's gonna have to be like the C4 at the movie Sly Stallone special, where you watch like his entire library.
Like even in a pandemic, I don't think I'm that desperate.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's lots of Sly to watch. But yeah, lots and lots of cool stuff happening. And the best place to find out all about it is our newsletter, the C4 Weekly. That goes out every Friday morning. You can sign up, check it out, bit.ly/the C4 newsletter, or jump into Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast. The cool thing about Discord is all the conversations that our community take part in, whether or not, let me ask you this, Anna. If you cook or bake 2 lasagnas You then take one lasagna and stack it on the other lasagna. Is that two lasagnas, or has that now become one lasagna?
It's the great philosophical question of our time. I'm on the one lasagna side of the fence.
Yeah, so am I. And these are the types of conversations that take place nowhere else throughout Canucks social media. In fact, you don't have to be a fan of the Vancouver Canucks. If you listen to our show, jump in the Discord and talk about lasagna. And if you agree with Anna that it has now become one lasagna, or if you disagree and feel it's still two separate lasagnas, no matter how many times you stack them together, you can let us know on the C4 text line, powered by us. That phone number is 604-200-6201, 604-200-6201. You can text us, you can leave us a voicemail, and if you do, you'll hear us and the commentary that'll go along with it on the next episode. If you just want to do it from your computer, speakpipe.com/C4 podcast will also do the same thing, though that one does require you to actually speak, hence the term speakpipe.
Yeah. And we want to remind you, if you do text in, as long as you want to be identified, please also include, name and where you're from, so we can make sure you get the credit for your opinion that you leave with us.
And one final note. If you want to support our show, one of the greatest ways that you can do that is by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/C4 podcast. Starting from $1 Canadian a month, we have a variety of different tiers that are allowing you to show your support of the show, but also in turn get insider access, whether it be being able to watch instead of the anthems, getting access to a secret, super secret Discord channel, to shout outs on the show, or possibly even thank you cards in the mail. And one of the things that we do, however, is at certain tiers is give people a shout out. And I want to give a huge shout out to Hercules, one of our newest patrons. He stepped up to support the show. And in doing so, not only is getting that shout out, because him supporting us allows us to keep the lights on, he's going to get access to, instead of the anthems, we got C4 Off the Rails, our twice monthly show where Anna and I just go fully off the rails. Like, we're talking about all sorts of crazy stuff. Like the last show, we talked about our favorite fictional sports teams. And I would love to share with all of our listeners what our favorite fictional sports teams are, but not going to happen. You'll either have to support us on Patreon, or two, beg and plead one of our patrons in C4 Discord to speak up and tell you what they are. But I don't think they will.
No.
Because it's an exclusive club, right? Like, to be that level of a VIP, you want to have the exclusivity that comes along with it.
Yeah.
So, any final words of wisdom that you want to share with all of our listeners this week? I mean, we don't have Sarah sharing words of wisdom that just throw us to the point where we can't, because we can't top it. This week it's just you and I. So what would you like to say?
Well, yeah, Sarah just shared the words of wisdom that it's just a game. It's not that important really in the grand scheme of things. But I will say that Canucks won a game of hockey, so it is really important. It's the most important thing in the world. And if they can win against Winnipeg again tomorrow, we're back in the playoffs, baby. Go all in at the trade deadline, Jim. I'm of course kidding, but it does put you in a better mood, honestly, having the Canucks win. So it would be fun if we could win at least another game in a row, wouldn't it?
Well, you know what the greatest coaches have said: when you win a game, you've won one. If you win two, you've won two in a row. And if you win three, that is a winning streak. It has happened before. I'm sorry, anytime I can drop the immortal Lou Brown, I gotta take it.
It's a good speech.
Gotta take it. Final words of wisdom for me: if you happen to get an Oculus Quest like I have, or any other VR display, and you're playing a game such as Beat Saber, just so you should know, you maybe need to go and lock your cat somewhere else, because your cat may look at your flailing arms and decide that you're in distress, and therefore try to help you or attack you. I'm not entirely sure which, but when you have a VR mask on, it's hard to deal with said cat when you can't see it. So consider those very good words of wisdom from someone who may or may not have lived through and survived to tell the tale.
Wow.
I know, right, Anna? Stuff you only get off C4. I'm Chris at Lightforce. That's Anna at A4603. Listen to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Price Coverage Network. And by the way, We're out.